Welcome to the Health Matters Podcast. I'm your host, Kareem Amiri, and today we're diving into an issue that may be close to many of you and definitely affects millions of individuals and families across the country, and that issue is caregiving. To help us explore the real impact of caregiving, I have a veteran of the podcast joining us today, Julie Enga. Julie is the team leader for Wellmark's Employer Health and Wellbeing team. Julie, I'm so excited that you're here to join me to help us lead us through it.
Yeah, thanks for having me back, Kareem. I'm really excited about this topic and what we're seeing out in our employer groups related to it.
Awesome. So, obviously you've been talking about this a lot lately, and just to level set for our audience, can you give us the definition of caregiving?
Yeah, you're going to see lots of different definitions, but I'm going to boil it down to a caregiver is someone that helps support an individual, both physical, emotional, could be financial, and you said it earlier, logistical. So think about helping give medicines or navigating the healthcare system, working within a school environment. So many different examples. And I know we were talking earlier, Kareem, about some of our personal examples. So just real quick, I'll share 3 quick ones just that might resonate with the people listening.
Okay.
If you think about right now, there's an individual I know that is taking care of a significant other going through cancer treatment while having 2 young toddlers at home. So think about the caregiving challenges, both emotional, just the physical support, and those types of things. Another one very near and dear to my heart is an older person who has a brother dealing with dementia. So he is both the emotional support, financial support, navigating the healthcare system for him, and other care. So another great example would be, I know we're hearing from lots of individuals here, Kareem, about adult children dealing with mental health. So a little different scenario, but still helping them navigate the mental health system and, playing that emotional.
Age,
you got it.
The whole family. And, it's great to get those real life examples. But when you think about the data around this, what can you share that displays or exemplifies that emotional, physical, and financial impact?
Yeah. So you said it earlier. We know so many individuals are caregivers today. On average, we know 73% of working adults are caregivers. So when you think about that impact, and then from a caregiver perspective, the impact to their own health, there's a lot of research coming out that talks about how caregiving can impact someone. So I would share in 2020, late 2020, Blue Cross and Blue Shield Association actually has caregiving, the impact of caregiving report that looked at the aggregate claims data of their commercially insured population to see the impact of caregiving and what it meant in claims. And what they found is caregivers have 26% higher claims or more health conditions than people that are not caregivers. So big
amazing.
impact.
Yeah.
Another couple things that resonated with me, and I know they'll resonate with you given our conversations with employer groups, is caregivers have a higher rate of high mental health concerns. They're often report difficulty in maintaining their own health. So lots of impacts for caregiving, not only on the person that's dealing with the condition, but those taking care of them.
Yeah, so when you think about the employers that we're supporting, and you mentioned it a little bit there about behavioral health, we're in the data, we're seeing the increases to behavioral health costs, but also there's increases in cancer rates as well. And we know here in Iowa, a lot of the data that's been shared around that nationally. But can you talk about that correlation? And you mentioned a little bit with the claims, but what is that overall impact when you look at the healthcare claims, but there's other data too as far as those employees and how their work maybe suffers or even maybe leaving the workforce?
You got it. I sit with you, your team, talking to employer groups, and we are looking at the rate of cancer within their population or their mental health conditions. But I always like to take a step back and say behind every claim, there's a caregiver. There's someone taking care of that person. And so definitely as we see rising claims from just individuals, we have to remember those caregivers behind it are also impacting just overall situations at employers. I think I mentioned earlier that 73% of caregivers are working caregivers. And so when you think about the impact of that to an individual workplace, it can be daunting. Yeah. What we know is about 32% of caregivers actually leave their workplace. They can't do both.
Yeah. And I had mentioned to you before,
you sure did.
My family, my spouse, she had to leave
yes.
for that very reason.
Yes.
So.
It's a very real dilemma. How do I stay in the workplace and then provide the support? I think the latest research shows that on average, caregivers dedicate 27 hours a week to caregiving. So if you think about that and trying to balance a position, and so it's very real. I mean, it doesn't, you and I both know we're looking at claims, but we got to say, so what do those claims mean? And how are the people behind them helping these individuals navigate the healthcare system and their daily care?
So, we've talked about this in the numbers that you've shared. It's very likely that most of the employers that are listening or the listeners to this, they have a fair share of employees that are, in this situation. Yes, for those groups who want to take the next steps to support those employees, what can they do?
So I think we got to remember there isn't a single thing that's going to answer this question. Yeah. So some of my tips go across many of the conversations we've had, Kareem, but I definitely say first things start at policies, not necessarily perks. So are your policies to support your employees, flexible leave, adjustable schedules? You want to make sure that your policies in place acknowledge that there's a variety of things going on.
Work-life balance.
You got it.
Right?
You got it. The second thing would be to really look at what do you have today that supports caregiving. So it might be, I think a good example I've heard from employer groups is how's it different than an employee assistance program? And so I don't want to answer for all the EAP providers out there, but I'd definitely be looking at my current benefits, perks, and those kind of things to see what do they provide for caregivers. So definitely some good questions to ask there. The other thing that I would say is look at your data. I mean, there is data within an employer's walls that help you understand the impact of caregiving. So whether it be absenteeism, leave records, and those types of things. The other thing that I believe I mentioned in other situations is you should ask your employees, what are they dealing with? What do they want to support? Because we are seeing people the increase in caregiving across our population is incredible.
I think I've heard you say the term quiet quitting.
Yes.
Right? So.
Yep. Yeah. So to me, that kind of goes to engagement. I know we just not too long ago completed an engagement survey. If your employees are not engaged, there's a variety of reasons, and it could be they're just dealing with multiple priorities. So the other thing that I really think is important, and I know we've had the conversation a lot, is making sure your leaders understand how to have that humanistic conversation. They need to have a pulse on what's going on, not only in the work environment, but at home to make sure they're providing the support, the resources, referring them to the right things within the organization. So,
being able to train your leaders on that is an important aspect.
You got it. And I think you know this, which is part of why I'm excited. But at Wellmark, we have been looking at ways to support the well-being of our members. Employer groups are asking, especially when these large topics like caregiving come up. And so we are actually rolling out a parenting and caregiving solution. And so I'm really excited about it because I do think in watching people navigate caregiving, there's so many opportunities.
Yeah, can you share with us some of the highlights? I know I'm really excited to have that opportunity to talk about it, but you do a great job explaining that.
Yep. So the solution actually looks at the different ways people want to learn and understand the caregiving situation. So I think I mentioned to you, there's a digital platform where I can create profiles for my loved ones that I'm taking care of and identify areas that I need support in. So all kinds of resources on there geared towards specific situations. So
Yeah, you were talking a little bit about those resources. Can you dive a little bit more into what actually you can do on the digital platform?
Yep. Definitely. So I'm going to give you an example. Navigating elder care issues like changing someone from their home to an assisted living, that seems like, oh, maybe I should call down the street and get some information from my local assisted living. But finding the right one that helps support someone along the way, what questions to ask, and even diving into the training on who might help take care of the individual. So lots of resources there. But then I'm going to take it to the next step because that's the other great part about this parenting and caregiving solution. Sometimes finding those right facilities, I'll use that as an example, can take time and energy. I have probably 15 within 20 miles of where we're at, probably more, Kareem. So which one's the right one? Which one works within my benefits? Which one has what I need as the aging parent, continues to progress? And so there is the live personal touch, and that is advising and concierge. So there's two different kind of components. One where they're going to find the resources. They're going to tell you, based upon what you need, here's the 5 facilities that you might want to check out.
So would that be advising, or like when you say between advising and
Yep.
concierge?
So that would be more like concierge. Okay. They're going to really put the information, they're going to do the research and help you navigate it. Advising will be some consideration, things to think about, list to review, maybe additional information, and probably along with what I've said is how to navigate the system. So I do think people learn different ways, and so there's that digital platform, but then there's that human touch that really, when you're feeling overwhelmed, they can help guide you.
And do they have, I think you were mentioning some webinars or live Q&As and that sort of thing? So
yeah, thank you. I'm glad we talked about this. They also do live webinars, so topically based. So think about if I'm navigating the mental health care system for an adult child, there may be a webinar that's focused on navigating mental health for your adult children. And so I can join these live webinars. I can sign up, and I'm listening at the same time as others dealing with a similar situation, asking questions, learning from not only the presenter, but those in the webinar. So
you're not alone. There's other people in the same boat as you.
Definitely. I think as you're going through it, you really learn how much you're not alone when you start talking to your peers and your friends, and definitely.
Well, thank you for sharing those insights. When we think about the employers like that we've mentioned before, it touches nearly everyone in the workforce. What can they do for a listener that's listening today? What can they do? What's the next step that they can do to move forward with this?
So for employer groups that are our customers, we are actually rolling out with an employer group webinar on March 25th, so we can talk about the impact of caregiving and also a little bit more about the solution. We try to go light on the solution. We definitely want our employer groups to understand why caregiving is important. You or our listeners can also reach out to their account manager. Our account managers understand our solutions and definitely want to hear what they're looking for and bring the right data to help them make those choices. So I would say those two things are a good start.
Yep, definitely. I was going to mention, last resort, you can definitely reach out to your account team and they'll be able to get you the resources that you need. Well, before we sign off, any last words of wisdom?
I can't think of any, Kareem. I just think when you and I met here today, we just started a brief conversation and realized how much we are touched by caregiving and those around us. So I think this is a really timely topic, and I'm excited that we're able to share it with our listeners and bring a solution to our customers.
The adage, it takes a village, really hits home here. So thank you, Julie. And thank you for everyone tuning in to this episode of Health Matters. We hope you found the information valuable and insightful. And, please, if you've enjoyed today's discussion, sign on to the Wellmark YouTube channel for more great content. We'll see you next time.